so just real quick where we are, for background, because I've gotten to talk to Bruni and Brenna, but I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we took the plan set, and when I say we, Mike has done a great job. We took the initial plan set, the cost came in just shy of 500,000. And so Micah has done quite a good job doing some value engineering and working with the engineer and architect to swap out some different options to give you a real list of deducts that we could put in there to get this project closer to budget. I believe we can run through them here momentarily, but the lowest we got is 417,000. Now, to be really clear, that's all the construction side. That didn't include any soft costs. I have some updated numbers for that piece of it. But first, if you've got that printout in front of you, I want to give Micah an opportunity to run at a high level through this. Let the board ask any questions that they want, or the committee, and then we can do our best to answer those before we dive into any soft costs. That all sound like a good plan?
Well, it worked.
Sounds very good to me.
Okay. Micah, I'll let you start. I can see they got the paper in front of them, so it should look pretty similar to what we're talking.
Okay. And just for kicks, I'm going to share it too, if that's okay, just so that anybody that can see the screen can kind of be looking at the same thing that I am. There we go. Okay. You all should have access to that. It looks like it's working. So you guys are looking at that same spreadsheet. I'm not sure, are they looking at the one that you had sent them, Josh, that has the soft cost built into it? I know they're similar, but just so I know what they're looking at.
No, they're looking at yours.
Okay, 2-4. Okay, so, excuse me, that existing conditions of all of the managerial roles that are played in here, including waste disposal, mobilization, demobilization, cleanup, everything that kind of goes into it to be able to operate that project, of course, is that fourth line or that first line, depending on what you're looking at. We've got a budget put together for all the concrete trades, which include getting in and placing all the gravel, getting all the concrete in place.
Does that second line item include the demolition of the existing floor?
And that's a great one. Give me just a second here. Because, no, I've got it down on line number 10, whoever can ask that. And I was looking for the same thing when you asked that to make sure I didn't miss a line there. But no, that's going to go down under the carpentry and demolition line item a little bit lower. So this is just purely concrete trades, but it does include that outside demolition of the existing ramp and sidewalk, as well as the interior slab on grade, which would include my vapor barrier and everything else that's required to be able to get my concrete slab in it.
I think the floor you plan on pouring in there, do you know yet?
What was the question about the floor inside? I'm sorry.
What kind of thickness are you thinking that concrete's going to be, and that's sort of basically the design of that slab? Is that got rebar and on a grid, or 6 inches thick, or is it 4 inches with nothing? What kind of slab you got in mind?
A great question. I'm pulling up the plans right now if you want to bear with me, but from memory, it was a 4-inch slab on grade that would have a trowel finish, and I think it had wire welded mesh, 6-inch wire welded mesh on it from memory. We did capture the styrofoam that has to go all the way around the interior for insulation values and so forth, and then it obviously had a vapor barrier, but bear with me just a second, I'll tell you exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But let's assume for now that it's 4 inches while I'm looking this up, just because it wasn't a very, structural. We don't have car traffic or vehicular or anything crazy like that, so it's probably only 4 inches would be my guess.
Is them the kind of questions you want to ask as we're going through here, or do you want to go all the way through first and then deal with them kind of questions?
No, I love it. I prefer kind of that open dialogue unless somebody else objects, but no, I love conversing to be able to kind of break this down a little bit and see what ideas we have. So yeah, works for me. All right. While I'm seeking that one out here, I know the next item we had covered was the masonry. We did basically most of your masonry remediation pertains to the back corner of the property where there's been a downspout that's been missing and it's been dumping a bunch of water on the brick facade and caused it to crack out pretty good. So we did come up with a budget to be able to go through and do some tuck pointing and be able to do some repairs to some of the masonry damages in the back. Our plans that we worked off asked us to estimate about 10% of the building, which was about 350 square foot from memory, is what we had estimated. But again, it's primarily in that back corner is where the worst was. And I don't know who had asked that question. It might have been Rudy. I'm not sure who had asked about that mason or that slab, but I'm going to dig into that here in just a second. I'm going through my plans trying to see where the wall detail calls out what we were working with, and I can get you an exact answer on it, but I don't want to get distracted while we got so many people on this call. We also, on that next line item, I had all of the trim carpentry that's required, as well as the casework for the restroom vanities, which also included the tops and the sinks in this line item. It does not include the doors in that one. It was purely the base casing, all of the other trim moldings that are required to go around there. And they're all stain grade material. And then I got the labor to be able to perform all the installation of all the trim carpentry on this line item. Everything except the doors, because they're going to pop up on the next line item here in just a moment that we'll get to.
On that trim, are you thinking poplar trim or mahogany trim? Were you after there?
I'm not mistaken. It was specified to have a red oak because the stain match, for it to be able to take the stain evenly, it was estimated to have to add a red oak species to be able to get it all to match out. And then of course, on the paint stage, it's all going to have stain and polyurethane over it to be able to get it to blend in there. But yes, you're correct. It was an expensive species, and we did have some value engineering ideas to be able to swap that out for paint grade products. But we've all pretty much said we don't like how that sounds, just because we've got a historic building and we don't really want to go back with a prime grade material, even though it does save some money. It kind of deteriorates the theme and the kind of the desired vision of what we're trying to do here. So as estimated, I want to say it was red oak to answer that question.
Does that number get that materials installed, stained, completely done, or is that just get them on site and they still need to be stained and installed?
No, it does have the labor of installing the vanities, installing the tops, and then installing all of the stain grade material. And that would be any of your casings around the windows, all the base around the floor. It does not include the crown molding that will go on the ceiling, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But that's because the ceiling that has been specified has a special crown that is designed to work in coordination and conjunction with the specified ceiling. It will still match and have the same finish, but it's probably going to be some kind of veneered product that they sell as a line item with the ceiling product. So this is everything that goes around the windows, everything that goes around the doors, and everything that goes down to the floor, basically, as well as your vanities, lavatories, tops, and sinks, including the installation. To answer your question, yes, that's correct.
So on them tops, I know there's a big difference between laminated tops and we'll say a quartz or granite. What kind of tops you got figured there?
These were laminated casework that's supposed to match the existing or the proposed vanities, and then it has a drop-in sink product that gets set down in there, and then it would get caulked all the way around. So it's not a solid surface, it's not a granite product. It'll match the bottom base vanities that are ADA compliant, if I'm not mistaken, looking at my plans. But either way, yes, it's laminated products. Yeah, good questions. Yeah, and it is. They are ADA compliant, so they got like a knee space with the removable panel that you've seen before. That way, when you have to get to the P-trap, you have the 4 screws and the panel comes out. But that way, wheelchair accessible capacity looks like it's designed to be able to be completely ADA compliant. And then because it's all laminated casework for the vanity bases that are wall mounted, the top is the same product, so it matches. Yep. Cool. Good questions. Your next item on here is your roof replacement, and on that one we did estimate to tear off and dispose. We have to put on, I think it was a buildup of about 4 inches of insulation for the roof detail. So you'll have basically a styrofoam or a EPDM, ISO board buildup, and then it'll have an EPDM roof system atop of it with all the flashing and everything in there. But the entire roof system with the gutter and the downspout, that's all been covered. Now this was a discussion, people, just so that we can kind of hit that one real quick while we're here. That was a cost savings, but that isn't been accepted, and the reason being, we don't want to let you all put this much money into the building and not have a quality roof installed with it. But it was an option of, do you take that off of this year's budget, do another fundraising event to be able to save the money on the front side to get this project done, and then in 2027 or 2028 put a new roof on it. That was what had been proposed. But we've all basically shot that down because we don't think it's very prudent to do that. But it is an option when I'm looking at how do we slice this pie up so that we can all be fed. That was an idea that we put out there. But there was the caveat of, will the state allow us to do that if we're going to remodel the inside when it goes through ComCheck and has to meet energy code? We don't think that it currently has the proper amount of insulation in the roof. And would they allow us to do the rest of it without upgrading the roof insulation? It's a variable. We noted it as an opportunity to be able to save some money in 2026, but at the end of the day, it's got some challenges with that. It was just a concept that I wanted to put in there to be able to see if there's any viability to it.
To my knowledge, roof leaks, so I don't think it's an option not to do it.
Yeah, you don't. So the EPDM, that's black, right?
That's correct, and the TPO is about the same price. I priced it both ways, and because it was such small quantity, technically TPO is a little bit cheaper, but it was so negligible, I didn't try to put that into the specs. We left it as designed.
Your opinion is that the EDPM is a better product than the TPO, even if you're like 60,000 stick on the TPO?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my opinion from our experience is that I like my TPO better, but mostly because of my environmental sustainability desire to be able to try to make good decisions that will reflect most of the sunlight instead of allowing it to increase the heat. So my personal preference is I like TPO whenever I can. I feel like EPDM's kind of being phased out. I don't see it as frequently. Nowadays, most everything we get into is TPO.
Yeah.
But quality-wise, they both have done the same. We've worked with EPDM for decades now, and it's tried and true, but so is my TPO at this point. And yeah, if you're talking 0.060 versus the other 60 mil, whatever the metric is, they're about equivalent. And even on the price point. Now, if we're doing 400,000 or 500,000 square foot, I'd probably be singing a different song. But on such a small square footage, I didn't find any big savings of swapping it out. Let's go back to your concrete. I did manage to get my file downloaded here, get it opened up. They did ask for a 4-inch concrete slab. It does not show any reinforcement in it, but I do have R11 dense board that would go all the way around it, of course, for energy code. And then we estimated that we're going to need 18 to 20 inches of rock imported, and it came to be, I'd have to pull up another file, but we're going to have 70 to 80 ton worth of rock that has to get injected into that, brought up in lifts and compacted to be able to get it to subgrade. And our only access is coming through the roadway, turning 90 degrees, going over the front stoop that we have to protect, placing it inside the building, then getting it spread, bringing it up in 4 or 6 inch lifts, and then packing it down as we go. So it was a little bit involved just to be able to fly that rock in there to be able to get it to grade. So that's kind of the reason that it carries a price tag with it. It took quite a bit of effort just to be able to get that in there and get it to to subgrade. But yeah, they called out for 4-inch concrete. That's how it was estimated to pour it. We'll have to pump it probably. I don't think we can even get a Georgia buggy back and forth through there. We were going to line pump it in, get it all finished, put a trowel finish on it, do some saw cutting for your control joints, and that's going to be a topic for conversation here in a minute of how do we actually finish that in just a moment. But that hopefully answers your question.
What was that already? Did you say R11 on that installation that goes around the wall below the concrete grade?
Yes, sir, which means it's probably an inch and a half. Typically it's R13 is what I've seen, but the architects have put R11 in here, which means that's what's going to have met ComCheck to be able to get it to pass the energy code.
Okay, so inch and a half, I think. And that's probably that blue board?
Yes, sir. Blue or pink, whatever flavor that we can come up with at the best cost point when in time. But yeah, you get the point. It goes all the way around the perimeter. The gravel will backfill up against it, and then it even turns horizontal for, I think it's 24 inches to the inside, but it's trying to insulate the interior of that slab so we're not having a bunch of heat loss that occurs at the grade level.
When you backfill that with that 18 inches of gravel, what are you thinking there, a dense grade or like Levens or something?
Yeah, it's a great question. I personally, the 11s and actually probably Indiana 7s or 8s, whichever one it is. I always mix up the Kentucky and the Indiana rock, but it's probably going to wind up being the more expensive one because I can't get big compaction equipment in there. And even if I could, I probably wouldn't want to because it's going up against the side of an old historic building. So that means the only thing I can really use to compact my rock is a vibratory plate compactor. So if that's the case, I would probably be using a looser rock that flows just so that I don't pack it all in there but not get full compaction, and then you have settlement issues and slab issues. So I'd probably be using the more expensive rock in that case, which would be your Kentucky 8s, Indiana 7s, or whatever the number is. I always get them mixed up, but the 3/4 to 1 rock.
Basically a clean rock, not a dense grade.
Correct, yes sir.
Now, you think you can run a plate compactor across clean rock and it compact, or it's just gonna push up? My experience is it's just gonna push up on you.
It will. You try to get as much compaction as you can, but you're never really going to achieve, 100% Proctor. But on the other hand, it'll still flow to be able to get it in there, and that's kind of the beauty of that washed rock. My fear is that I only get 75 or 85% compaction if I use a dense grade with smaller equipment. So from a safety standpoint or a risk standpoint, we would use the washed rock just to put it in, get it packed as much as we can. But in my experience, those number 7s and number 8s, I can do really well with them. Number 2s or anything bigger than that, then you're right. I can't ever really get it. It's kind of almost put it in place and leave it kind of material. But on the other hand, it doesn't really compact. The 7 and 8s, I should be able to get it kind of geometrically placed in there and get as much compaction as we can. And that's about as good as it can get.
Yeah, had you, with all the challenges of getting that rock in there and that sort of thing, have you considered flowable fill
Exactly,
instead of the
my next question.
instead of the gravel, and that way you know you got 100% compaction. It's going to basically self-level. Just stick the shoe to the truck in there and let her float. A little more work than that, but not a lot.
Correct. And I didn't run the numbers, but historically my flowable fill numbers come out to be a little bit higher on the material, but less on the labor, like you're indicating, which is a brilliant idea. But on the other hand, this is kind of a standard spec that's done in most of the residential applications when they're small inside a garage, inside a basement where you can't really do this. And it's kind of an acceptable standard, which is why I went with it. Now it is a good idea. You did kind of actually tap into something, but I bet you it's going to be very minimal savings because while that material will be higher, the labor will be lower. I bet it's a wash at the end of the day, but I am going to make a note of it to be able to investigate it to see how many cubic yards of flowable fill would need to go in there. But then again, bear in mind, this is all pedestrian foot traffic. It's not like it is even a garage. It's definitely not a parking garage. It's no forklift traffic. So I'm not terribly concerned with the amount of settlement that you would have. I don't think you're going to have any. It'll be right on par with every other residential application that's ever been built in our region. But I do want to see if there's economic value in swapping that out. It's a great idea.
You can continue on there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I appreciate whoever brought that up. I will investigate it. Again, it is smaller. If this was something where we were doing a whole massive project, then these make big differences. But we are in such small quantities. I don't know that it's going to move the needle, but I'll definitely research it. It's a great idea. Let's go to this next line after the roof replacement line. It's the interior doors. And this is where we found that matching species so that it takes stain evenly. I've got jams with slabs that can be stained in polyurethane. And this does include the labor and the materials. I also, on this line item, I captured all my commercial exterior windows as designed in those plans. I also have 2 exterior commercial storefront aluminum door systems which will match the windows. There's the larger one that's up on the front of the building that opens out to the road, and then there's the back one that opens to that ramp that we're going to construct. windows and the doors, exterior doors will match. And then all of your interior doors will be stained to be able to match all of the other casework that is going throughout that whole building there.
On your storefront windows, I just put some in, right before it got cold there in December. And they frosted up terribly, and I got to looking at them, and the side lights on them are insulated. The door itself and the jamb around the door was not insulated. And when questioned about that, it was like it was an oops. Does all your storefront windows as well as door fixtures, are they insulated, including the jambs?
The door frame, let's just talk the door frame for a second, not even, the slab frame that'll have the glass in there. And just for kicks, I guess you guys don't have access, I was gonna show you the one right here in my office, but the door frames do not have any insulation in them. But the commercial storefront frame system that the door mounts into, we have a internal spec that we have written for ourselves for this exact reason. And what we do is strip down R13 insulation into strips, and we insert it into that hollow cavity for this exact reason. And then we wrap it in duct tape to be able to hold it in place while we're installing it. Then we can come back and just simply pull off the duct tape afterwards. Now you've got insulated window frames. This is a challenge, and you're right. Usually when I have run into this, it's been in medical operations, when we've been working in healthcare facilities where they have really stringent humidity and temperature requirements for some of the sensitive equipment that's in there, and they'll wind up keeping it at a certain temperature and humidity on the inside, and in the summertime it'll cause it to sweat, and it's been an issue. And I'm like, hey, guys, we have insulated, there's nothing more that I could do. This is almost a dehumidification to be able to change the dew points and so forth. So everything you're describing, I'm very familiar with it, but this is also standard practice for every other commercial building that's out there. If anything, I think it's cool because we try to go a step further than what is typical by even insulating. Most of the time when we take these apart or we see others, they don't even have that insulation in there. So it's kind of what the industry has accepted as the standard, and it does meet ComCheck and energy code, but at the same time, we can also go above and beyond to be able to try to make sure we're doing everything we can to be able to minimize that risk. So yeah, you're very perceptive. That's a good one, but that's what we do. I can't say there will never be an issue with it. But the times that it does, it's the dead of summer when you have it at 68 degrees on the interior and it's 94 degrees. It will occasionally do that, and that's kind of an accepted risk from what I've seen in all the other projects that we've been involved on.
So that insulation you're talking about, you're just basically talking about sticking that in the end of the box tube jam, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So there's no thermal break on that aluminum going from the inside to outside. So that's for sure going to be a condensation point in some condition that exists throughout the year. You agree with that? I know that's a problem on many doors, but it'd be nice if we could avoid it on this one.
It absolutely, yeah, totally agree. It almost gets to the spot where it's kind of where it's hard to combat in battle on the actual window style, structure, and installation methodology. It almost gets to a point where it comes back to the HVAC side of how to be able to control some of that temperature and humidity to not give it that dew point condition to allow it to condensate. And we've had to put some humidification or dehumidification systems in place to be able to help control that. So yeah, it is a risk, but I don't think it's that severe in this case. And again, it's on par with all the rest of the systems that are currently specified and installed. So you'd be in the same boat as everybody else in every other commercial building. Now the caulking that goes around it's got a urethane based sealant that goes all the way to the brick on the exterior. And then of course your interior is going to wind up having all of our stain grade materials. So usually when we do that, I still apply some clear acrylic caulking to the interior. And the purpose here is to be able to try to help condition that so that you don't have that temperature that variance. It just kind of seals that in to be able to try to control it. But regardless, again, you're kind of in the same boat as every other commercial window system that's going to be installed, if that makes any difference. Good questions. Anything else on that topic?
What kind of locks do you got figured for these doors? Is there a lock system?
just a moment. Door sheet.
Does the town use a cord type deal to where you can change the locks like in the town here, just by changing the cord of the doorknob?
Yeah, that's what they did through here, through the town hall, yeah, they
So
just
would
changed
you
that.
put that same system over there, that same key, said it might be a different key, or was it even gonna get locked? Then we get locked.
No, it's gonna be locked, yeah, cause I mean, at night it's gonna be locked,
It's supposed to be on a time
Yeah.
lock, isn't it?
yes.
Electronic time lock.
Yeah,
It's not open all the
Yeah.
time tonight.
that's correct.
But we
So
changed all
on
the tumblers in here. Cooks came out and did all that for all the doors.
Yep, and I can get you the details. It's probably, it's gonna be in your spec book, that was provided with this initial one is what we priced off of. And it should be in accordance with everything that you were looking for. I'd have to go back into this one to dig in myself. But we did have all of the, access control products that needed to go in there for this purpose. And it was exactly, it should be on par with whatever had been designed initially. But I can investigate that more and get back to you if you'd like to hear more details.
All right.
Your next item here, we have our demolition that we talked about earlier. That's going inside the building, pulling out a handful of the stuff that gets salvaged, which is basically that lockbox machine that's in the back room, pulling that out, salvaging it. There wasn't a whole lot of other salvage stuff in there. The safe obviously needs to be protected through construction, the door specifically. But any of the demolition of the ceiling, existing walls that are left over, and of course that floor box that's collapsed in the middle with whatever carpet or floor finishes on top of it. Getting rid of all of the material. We've got the dumpsters covered in that earlier line item that we saw.
Now, we're not getting rid of the safe in the back room, we're not salvaging it.
No, but we do need to pull it out and hide it so that it doesn't
Okay.
get damaged. Right
Okay.
now it's in the position, so it needs to get transferred from that back, and we were gonna hide it in the safe throughout construction.
Okay.
But we also won't do it until our concrete floor is in place. So once the
Okay.
concrete floor is secured, we have to protect it, find a pallet jack of some sort to be able to get it moved from the back to the front, keep it inside and kind of clean it up, but it all has to, so that's part of the salvage operations that we built into the demolition budget.
Okay,
So after our demolition, of course, we're gonna move right into the concrete phase, because once that's finished, we would move into the framing. Framing will sit atop of that existing, or that proposed concrete floor. It is wood framed on this whole project. We capture all the insulation, the drywall that goes all the way around the perimeter. The ceilings, it has traditional acoustical ceilings, acoustical ceiling tile style ceilings in the restrooms. And yeah, just the restrooms, because the back utility room is open, there's no ceiling in that room. But you do have some fancy ceilings that are a tin style, a metal style ceiling that looks historic. And we actually just used this on a recent project. It was the same product, coincidentally, that's specified on one to the next, which is why I knew about the crown molding that is uniquely designed to work in conjunction with that ceiling. That ceiling has a texture to it, and that means all around the edges where we have to cut the ceiling tiles, if you don't use that crown, there's not a good way to finish it out. So they have to sell you their fancy proprietary crown molding that goes with their proprietary ceiling. It's all kind of in conjunction, but we did capture all of that. And then lastly on this line item, we've got all the wall paint, the staining and polyurethane that we had talked about, any other paint needs that go on throughout this project are all in this line item as well.
Does that also include the trim and door install on that line item?
No, because the installs of those items are on the line item just above you, from memory. Yeah, your interior door, that covers labor and material for all of it. The paint budget goes down here in just a minute, on that next line item, where we have to go through and stain all that product. And just for purposes here, just for means and methods, when all that product comes in, it'll all get stained laying down on sawhorses. Then when it gets cut, fit, installed, then we come back and touch up any of that, and then that way we're only having to apply polyurethane to it once it's in place. Possible we might even add a coat of poly to it before we even do that, but regardless, you understand the means and methods, and you all have done this before and know exactly what I'm referring to.
Now, when you when you stain that, you lose the opportunity to caulk your joints like you would if you're painting, don't you? Where you can get that perfect fit.
Yeah, you do, which means that the labor required to be able to do stain grade product versus paint grade product, you gotta be really good. My tolerances on paint grade material is about 1/16 of an inch. Once I get into stain grade material, it turns into 1/32 of an inch because you can't hide it like you're saying. I like to try to apply some clear acrylic, but it's not so much for view because it's clear. It doesn't really help hide a whole lot of it, but it does help keep it all in place and make sure that that you don't have to just try to keep it tight. It's almost negligible. It's just something that I like to do when I do stain grade material. Helps kind of clean it up a little bit. But yeah, you're right. The quality of installation is paramount for it to look good.
So,
But that was also why we had talked about trading that out. When you get away from stain grade material and you use paint grade material, it doesn't take near as much time to be able to install the trim carpentry when it's paint grade. That was part of the value saved if we went that route. But then you got paint grade trim moldings that run all around the building, and it kind of deteriorates from the whole goal of the spirit of the design.
so when you put that base down on the stain grade, I heard what you said about the miters. What about how it sits against the wall? Have you guys looked at all, see how straight them walls are to see if we're gonna have cracks behind that? But I'm guessing there's a sizable base.
Yeah, I think they called out for a 6-inch or an 8-inch tall base, but don't forget the framing budget has us furring out all the walls. We're not going up against any of the masonry, so we'll have to string lines in there to be able to get it straight for that reason, because you're right, you can't hide it very well. So part of the framing is required to be able to fur that out, and then it gives a cavity for us to be able to insulate it, but then it also allows us to be able to get straight walls to be able to not telegraph that out based on your stain grade trim. So yeah, you're thinking ahead, but yes, that is all covered.
Okay.
That covered. Okay. So here's another one. You all are looking at that spreadsheet, and we're just now getting to the first one of these options that we're suggesting that we don't do. The plans had specified for a really nice epoxy coated flooring system to go atop of that new concrete slab. It would look really, really nice, but it costs a lot of money. And that was one of the things that we said, hey, can we skip that one? And the reason I'm suggesting it is, one, budgetary and economic impact, of course. I think it's got $11,000 some odd dollars to put an epoxy coating over this whole floor. But two, this could be done later. If we save this money now and you get a year or 3 years into it, it just really bugs us, you have the ability to go back and apply this. We could shut that place down for 3 to 5 days, and we could go through and apply that later. So you're not up the creek if this is passed, but it does save $11,000 that's dearly needed to be able to keep the project viable. And that's why it had been basically approved by everybody on previous phone calls of, hey, let's say we're not going to put that epoxy coating on there. But we did build the budget in there to see what it would cost to do that. It takes about $11,000 to be able to get the epoxy system prepped and installed.
So what
Questions
is
on that?
what is the flooring finish then?
Great question. So we had some other options here just a little bit lower. If you scroll down to the very first value engineering item that's on there, one of the options was, hey, let's not use an epoxy system to put on there that adds some various color and some detail and does some cool stuff. Instead, what if while we have that floor virgin and looking nice and pretty, we simply applied a clear urethane-based sealant over top of it? It saves some money. It cuts $6,500 off the budget, which means $11,000 minus $6,500 is $2,500 or $3,500 or whatever it is to be able to get the floor clean, prepped, and apply that sealant on there. It could be done. You could even tint it so it's a brown color to be able to make it look like what you would put over an exposed aggregate concrete. It would look nice, and it does save some money, but again, we're trying really hard to make this project on budget, and that has been declined as well. So what we had estimated for was getting a good finish on our concrete, cleaning it up, and not doing anything else with it, having a pure concrete slab unfinished inside of it is what's proposed now.
How slick of concrete finish you think you can get on there? You know, the troweled finish is a huge swing between what I call a mirror finish and an average troweled concrete floor. To what level of slickness are you seeing on that?
Yeah, we would have to kind of follow all the ACI guidance to be able to get as tight of a trowel finish as we could possibly get on it. And if we're not going to have anything on top of it, it's even more vital to be able to make sure that we're really managing the finish as best we can. Now, there is a line to that. At some junctures, I don't have it budgeted to come in here and polish this floor, and if we're going to go to that distance, then we might as well just put an epoxy system on it. So, unfortunately, we're just going to have to do as high quality concrete finish as we can, and maybe even have to say, hey, I know this would be acceptable in a traditional residential application, but let's run a troweling machine one more time just to be able to try to get that mirrored finish to be able to make this look as presentable as we can, because this needs to be finished product. And even once it is finished product, we got to try really hard to be able to protect that floor throughout the remainder of the project, because once it's damaged, it's going to be even tougher to be able to get in and clean that up and make it look good. So it's a challenge. It's not very easy from a means and method standpoint, but it does save some money, and it's an option for suggestion, I guess.
Is there a series
Yep.
of floor drains in these floors?
There is in the restrooms. Let me scroll down the plumbing plan, because if I'm not mistaken, I have mop sink, and then in front of each commode, if I'm not mistaken, they have drains. One moment.
And my Mike is looking that up. I just want to remind everybody, so these are suggestions to help get things closer to budget. These are all your decisions to make. We're not going to drag these decisions for you. We're just trying to give you what we think are good recommendations, or at least some good options.
Yeah. All right. So I have, and we're going to hit this up too in just a second, because there's a value engineering idea that comes with this as well. But I have 2 clean outs that will come up in the floor. Yep, one at the end of the line, and then another right before it goes out. So you've got 2 clean outs that'll look like a floor drain. You'll just have a cap over top of it. You do have a mop sink that's in there too, but you won't see that where it comes through the floor. The mop sink will cover it up, but yeah. That's my vent. Yeah, I've got 2 clean outs that are on there to answer your question, but they'll have the steel plates that'll be mounted flush to it, so it's not a tripping hazard. Cool. Your next line item is the restroom accessories. We had estimated it according to how that's drawn up. It includes all of the ADA compliant restroom accessories that are required, including your mirrors, grab bars, paper holders, everything that's going to be required. On that same line item, I also included the bicycle rack that goes outside on that new pad that we will pour, and the handrails that are going to be required for that ADA compliant concrete ramp that goes up the side. They're all converged in that one line item that's got a budget about $500. That's your accessory line item. Questions on any of that?
Is there drawings on all these bike racks and stuff?
Yes,
Should be
sir.
in what they provide us with.
Okay.
Yeah, there's good pictures that kind of show what you're trying to do, and then the specs call out exactly the manufacturer or equivalent. That's what we budgeted off of, and I think we actually found the same one. I think it was a good. They said, I really like the plans. They did a pretty good job, but yeah, it does have it all on there. Your next line item.
Yeah.
That's what they worked off of.
Yeah.
How do you know?
Your line item is an HVAC system that was specified in these plans. And I know, I think, might have been Rudy that was kind of saying, hey, that is way hot. What's going on here? They had specified a really nice high-end variable refrigerant, one of the nicest ones on the market, to be able to meet contract and be able to make sure that there's a good energy efficiency and not taking up as much, being as energy efficient as possible. But it's expensive. And we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this one, because we found value engineering ideas to be able to find something comparable, but at a different price point. So we don't need to go too far into this one, except knowing that budget was the baseline budget that had the units HVAC as it was designed. But it's kind of irrelevant because we found $30,000+ in cost savings by switching it up. And we'll talk about that here line item just a little bit lower, if that's okay with you all. Any questions? You guys okay with that one? Kind of seems like a mute point, but
So it's still only $50,000 for this 4-head, 3-ton system. That's what you're saying?
that's 33,000, 83,000. So yes sir, that's correct. You're about $50K for the HVAC system. That's accurate.
Is that a roof unit or where's that set?
No, it's probably a wall-mounted or a pad-mounted mini split unit in the back of the building, and then it'll have cassette systems that basically fit into the grid up in each room, and then all the line sets that have to run throughout there. So it's kind of a ductless system, which saved a little bit of money, but it's also got some pretty high technology involved to be able to allow you to be able to balance it all. But now it's kind of computer systems that will balance it versus ductwork that runs all over the place that has baffles that have to be baffled up or down to be able to get it to balance. Now you can kind of do it with technology to be able to put that together. So it's a smaller system. This is a 3-ton unit for memory versus a 3.5-ton unit that was specified. But again, it did have $30,000 of savings, and it got you closer to the budget.
When you go to that mini split, you don't have replaceable filters, air filters in there anymore, do you? You just got the washout ones?
You know, that's a great question, and if I'm not mistaken, you just use these. It has one in every cassette head. I've got one in our office, which is what I'm trying to remember, because I actually have it on our maintenance plan for us to do, and I had to see what that required. There's a filter inside every one of the heads that would be cleaned out on whatever 90-day duration or whatever your maintenance program would look like. But it's not replacing the filters. You would take the screen out, take it outside, shake it out, or even hose it out if you had to. But it's kind of like a screen that fits inside the cassette for memory. Yeah, I know that's it. We have one in our place, so yeah, that's how that would work. Okay, sure. Your next one is your electrical program, and this includes a 200-amp panel. That would be set in there, all your wiring, conduits, boxes, everything that would go into that one. And it does include the lighting as well, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. But this was your entire electrical package with labor and installation, switching, you name it. This was 100% of it as designed, was your electrical package.
So,
and again, we'll break. Go ahead.
in that building, is that 100% of the electrical replaced in there? Is that the plan, or is some of it can be salvaged? Do you have any idea?
No, you got a 100-amp service that's in there. We worked with, it's not REMC, I think it was Duke, and we talked to them about their ability to be able to get us, make sure that we had enough service and that there wasn't any additional costs in there. But we need to upgrade your service from a 100-amp service to a 200-amp service, which meant that there was virtually nothing salvageable in there. It all comes out and it gets a brand new 200-amp panel and then just gets ran out new. Got wall packs and all the exterior lighting that's required, your interior lighting throughout, exhaust fans in the restrooms had to be energized. It was the full works. But again, we are going to dig into that here in just a minute when we scroll down to some of the VE stuff, because we talk about some ideas for the controls and the lighting and some of the different VE options to be able to try to get that on par. Your next line item was your plumbing, which would include, again, 100% of your piping, fixtures, labor, everything that's going to be required. And we got some VE options that we'll talk about here in a second, but per plan, that's what had been estimated. Your last line item on the baseline was window coverings. We estimate the product that was specified in there, but of course it's got a 9,000 plus or minus line item budget for just the window coverings that go through there. We did select to not include those in our budget for basic economic reasons. Question being, are they actually needed? At nighttime, the lights are going to go off anyway. In the daytime, do we really want them on there? And again, this was another one that you guys can decide, do we want this now? Is it something we do ourselves? Is this something that we want to do later in the future? You still have the options. You're not up the creek, but it also helped us get this project a little bit closer to being on budget, is why that was declined. Questions on any of the baseline stuff? We already had some good questions, but you guys kind of seen how we arrived there now before savings ideas. Any questions or anything to talk about at that point?
Is all the wiring gonna be running conduit?
It's a great question, and I'd have to go back to my quotes, but because it's considered commercial, I don't know. I don't think I'm allowed to use Romex. Everything's going to have to be sheathed or conduited. I have to have metal boxes in here, so
What?
yeah, it will all be conduited.
With stranded wire, single THHN stranded wire?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure, but it was all designed and be in accordance with what the electrical engineers had designed. I don't know
Okay.
the answer exactly. Back into it to find out pretty quickly.
Just for clarity, when you talk about conduit, you're including MC cable on that same thing, flexible conduit?
Anywhere I can where it's not seen, it's not visible, I prefer to go to MC, of course, for economic reasons. Anything that's going to be visible or kind of left exposed, we usually have to use rigid. And then, yeah, back in your utility room, there would probably be more rigid than MC would be my guess. But if it's going through wall cavities, then yeah, anytime we can, we would drill it and then just simply put MC through it.
And just for clarity, when you're talking about rigid, you're not talking about rigid, you're talking about thin wall then, THHN. That would just slip together instead of screws together like pipe. Normal rigid is, rigid conduit is threaded together. You're talking about.
Yes, no. Yeah, we would be. It's all connectors where they fit in there. It's got basically a set screw on it. I call it rigid, so whatever the technical term is, yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
You're more advanced on the electrical side than I am, it sounds like. But yeah, you're thinking clearly. Yep.
On the exterior, what type gutters? What's the gutters made of?
They are aluminum roll-off, 6-inch from memory with a 3-inch by 4-inch downspout, and then the color would be to be determined, but we would make it match the exterior facade. Probably a black color would be my guess, but we would get it approved in our submittal process before we ordered it. But it's not copper, it's not a commercial profile, it would be a standard traditional 6-inch. We'd probably use local roll-off companies to be able to bring the gutter run, the run to be able to install it.
So them downspouts will be, they'll be formed and not square cornered to where you have to fabricate all your discharges at the bottom. You can buy fittings for that.
That's correct, yes, sir. They'd all be kind of pre-manufactured, rolled off products. They're not box channel material that we would fabricate ourselves or bend and break ourselves. Yeah, that's correct. Kind of a residential grade versus a commercial grade product, but for cost purposes, that's kind of what was specified, and it makes sense. I think you only have one in the back, maybe it was two, but I think you got it all the way in the back with one big gutter with one large downspout that runs down the back corner, because that's the one that's missing. That's caused some masonry issues, but I don't even think, dude, that size it. That is something that I need to investigate to be able to make sure I don't need to stick a second one on there. But even still, we're talking about 16 foot worth of downspout. But yes, I'm with you. All right. Let's talk about some ideas that we had that might be able to save some money if it's something you all wanted to do here. We talked already about substituting that epoxy floor with a clear sealant. This in previous conversation has been declined for economic reasons, just to leave the concrete bare. Therefore, this line item is not being used. There was another option for some less expensive window coverings. It saved $4,600, but again, we don't even want to spend $4,500 on it. We can save some money here by not having any window coverings at all. You all choose to do it in the future. You can install it yourself. You can do this in 2027. But either way, that one had been declined in previous conversation, it looks like. Your plumbing ones, let's talk about these. There's 5 or 6 ideas that we had that might be suitable. One of the things that we did was the had requested that we install an 1.25 inch water line to the building, and also running a new sewer lateral from the building. And if this is new construction, okay, that kind of checks out, but you already have an existing water and a sewer line that are coming to the building, and they're probably not 1.25 inches, and they really probably don't need to be. So we talked with the architect and the engineers to be able to see if we could get away with the existing water service line and the existing sewer with whatever size it is. It's probably 3/4, maybe 1 inch. But he was okay with that, but he did ensure or asked us to make sure we leave an allowance around here to be able to get back on that if we find that the water line is crushed or the sewer line is clogged and we do run into an issue. Know that that is a variable, and I'll have to kind of lean on you all and Josh to be able to help how to be able to structure that. But if we were able to use the existing water and the existing sewer lines, we save $2,200 by not having to do trenching and replacing pipe that's already in its current position, was the thinking.
So Micah, just to make sure I understand, if they are good with that $2,200 deduction, there's nothing left in there for that allowance currently. That'd be something that we would need to make sure we accounted for if needed.
Yeah, Josh, that's great. It is accepted, so we took it off the budget as if we're not going to need it. But I think it was not Pierce, the mechanical engineer that we had worked with, or the architect that we had worked with. He said we're to be able to hold on and retain some kind of allowance in case there's a problem with that. But yeah, if it can work, then that would be the preferred method, of course.
You know, your big usage on that water line for that size is all got to do with your urinal flush valves and your toilet flush valves. On the toilets, are they gonna have a bowl behind them, or is it gonna be a flush valve? Like a Sloan or a Zerm?
Mm-hmm.
Cause that's what requires so much more. Other than that, a 3/4 line is fine for in there. I'm sure that 1.25 was recommended because there's multiple, large volume flush valves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why we had a conversation with the architect to verify that. I'm seeing tanks on all the commodes, and I don't see any flush valves here.
Is there any urinals in there?
No urinals. I have 2 commodes, 2 sinks, water fountain with a bottle filler, and then a mop sink.
You get about a
And that's
3/4 line, no problem.
Yeah, because I'm showing that there's nothing larger in this whole piping plant that's larger than 1 inch, other than your 1.25 inch they were bringing in to be able to feed it. But that's kind of why we had asked, can we not use a 3/4 or 1 inch line if you only have a 3/4 coming into it anyway? Is that not enough? And then he said, yeah, he said it could work. He said, we're fine with that so long as it actually is working and in good condition, which is unknown until we run a snake down there or we flush through there to go see how that works.
Yeah, everything shows a tank diagram
Mm-hmm.
for toilets.
Yeah. We also had another one. If you're looking at that same diagram, somebody was just counting the modes there. Notice that you got 2 water heaters. Well, actually, you got 3 water heaters that are in there, but these are basically tankless water heaters that are wall mounted next to the plumbing fixtures, which means you got multiple different units that did have a price tag with them. We looked to be able to see what would it take to be able to put a single 40-gallon water heater in that utility room back there, and we found that to be about $500 cheaper by not having to have extra electrical running to those water heaters and then subbing out those water heater units for a single water heater. It had about $500 savings. So small gains, but again, every little bit helps, I guess, and we were trying to figure out how to be able to dig deep there.
So you're saying we took 3 tankless to 1 and only saved $500?
Correct. They're small tankless. This isn't like a whole house tankless system. These are basically small on-demand water heaters that are only sufficient for the unit that's there. But yeah, each one of them has a price tag, and then the electricity that has to go to each one of them versus one of them, and that heats up the whole hot water system. So yeah, but it did only save $500. That's correct.
What's the amp draw on them tankless? Probably up around 40 or 50 or higher than that.
They're ridiculous.
Don't know, but I can look at that as we're talking.
That's not something
Yeah.
we wanna buy.
Well, Shane, the only one I've ever experienced, Shane's got it over his house, and he's got to run vinegar through that thing like a coffee maker every 3 months to keep it working. It's tankless.
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered that with him?
Yep.
Anyway, I'd suggest a tank would be my.
To me, the tankless are, the only way they're good is if you're on gas. Because there's no efficiency in them besides the upkeep and maintenance. I've heard that too about keeping them flushed.
Yeah.
So,
We had
standard
trouble
old
with, we done
tank,
away with
40
all
gallon
of it.
tank goes a long way.
Well, and you know, do you even need a 40? You think about what your sink, so 5 gallon do all your sinks. Your mop sink is gonna be the biggest deal when you create, and you ain't never gonna get more than 5-10 gallon out of it, yeah, so you could still get by with less than a 40 and you would never notice it.
That's a good point because 40 has a whole normal house. So,
Yeah, we were watching out for that,
If you don't like long showers.
if you don't like one there, I like
yeah,
one.
we were watching out for that mop sink in the back is kind of why we were looking at the ability to be able to keep up and service all of it, but you're right, you might be able to size that a little bit smaller potentially. The next VE item was replacing those cleanouts that we talked about earlier. We went to a different brand, and then the architect said, yeah, as long as it meets the same grade and quality, if you got a brand change that saves some money, you're welcome to it. And we found about $175 worth of savings of switching away from a Zerg product. We also looked at, instead of putting an 1.25 inch backflow preventer, if we were able to use a 3/4 or 1 inch based on whatever's in existence currently. That saved about $1,000 by downsizing the backflow preventer. That was another item that we built in there.
Why do we need a backflow preventer in there? There's no sprinkler system, is there?
There is no sprinkler
There's
system,
no
but when
boiler
it's
system.
yeah, when it's commercial, it's required because you have public people that'll be in the restrooms. I think it's a water quality and safety issue, but it's plumbing code.
It's a water company. They're doing all commercial. They make all commercial clients have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was only if there was, you know, there was somebody that could backflush back in there, so a sprinkler system, a boiler system, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah.
There's a need for it,
Fort
but-
Charles County does that. Right, Rudy?
I'm not sure what the policy is. I
That's
don't
what they-
remember.
Well, you sell them the board, don't you know?
Don't you? Oh.
Yeah, they're commercial ones. I know we had to do that too. They're saying just commercial, just for that purpose.
You know, the bummer about having, you gotta get that dang thing tested every year.
Yes.
That's the
Yes,
bummer
sir.
thing about it, so that's gonna cost you $600-700 every year just for that silly thing.
It does.
I also have the idea of, do we need a mop sink? We could save some money, but I think everybody said, nah, we want a mop sink. We're gonna have a hard time keeping the place clean if we don't have a place to be able to do that. I also ran the numbers to see what if we didn't have hot water at all. We got rid of the water heater, of course, and we found about $500 savings, but it was decided that we do need to be able to have hot water, so that doesn't help anything. Next line item was, could we get rid of that stain grade material and turn it into paint grade material? Again, it's not been accepted. We don't really like it, but it did save about $4,000 if we substituted it out. But then again, it gets away from the whole spirit of the design in a historic building, so we've all kind of denied that option. Here's that conversation from earlier where we got rid of that high efficiency multi-refrigerant system and traded it out for a mini split system, and it does save $33,000, which looks like it has been accepted on this program here. So that's kind of how we were able to get it closer to budget. And then the next 5 items through here, I don't know if you all have the ability. I guess you have to print it out, but we do have this design where you can click on the link to be able to see the pictures and the specs of what we're talking about. But we basically took the lights that were specified, and then we found a comparable product that's at a better price point and did substitutions for all the lighting fixtures to be able to get that reined in. And you can see the impact that each one of them had. Altogether, it looks like it saved approximately $9,300 worth of savings just by switching out all the lighting fixtures for a different brand, basically. The look and feel will be similar, but different, but it did save, $9,000 some odd dollars, and that's It was included in that electrical budget above, but we also decided to see if we could find competing manufacturers and some of their different product lines to be able to get the same function out, but with a different manufacturer. And we were able to save about $3,600 some odd by swapping that out. So it still functions the same, but we just were able to change out the brands to be able to get some cost savings, and we were able to save about $3,600 from that line item. Very similarly, when we were talking about that, I did propose that do we actually need that, but do we need the smart features to be able to have motion and timers and so forth? If we just went to traditional toggle switches, but then you'll have the issue of somebody came in at 7 o'clock and nobody went by and the lights were on all night. So that's been overturned. It saved a little bit of money, but not enough to justify the change it doesn't look like. So that one's been denied. And then the last one that I had thrown out there just to be able to see what it would take to be able to get rid of the fancy ceilings as soon as you walk in the door, that metal pan ceiling that's kind of a aesthetic feature. If we got rid of that, we just sprayed the entire ceiling black. It saves about $1,500, but again, nobody really likes that idea either, it doesn't sound like, because you're losing a really cool feature. When you walk in that building, we want it to be able to be a historic looking feature. And by taking it out, I think you're going to lose a really cool aesthetic detail that you're going to want. And it only saved about $1,500. So it's pending. I don't know if anybody's made a definite decision, but it was just an idea that we threw out as a value engineering opportunity. That just about completes everything that I had on my list, unless somebody has questions, knows of something I'm missing. Altogether, it looks like we were able to trim a budget from 488.
485, 488, somewhere there, yeah.
There you go. And we got it down to about 417,000 of hard costs of construction costs currently. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the soft cost. What was the soft cost gonna be?
I can show my, I will share my screen. I'll read them to you. There's only a couple, and so since you guys can't see very well, I'll read them to you. But I've got 5 soft cost line items all, so it should be pretty easy. Where is my share button? Hold on one second. Sure. Okay, so Nick, you can probably see these. For our soft costs, I have 5 line items. The first one is like a legal and liability insurance. I've got a bunch of $2,000 in there. You know, that's actual costs we're going to have to get insurance policy on the building, have an attorney review our contract, that kind of things. I've got one of the items, this is up for discussion with you all. Prime AE, Prime Architects and Engineers is your guys' consultant. You guys paid them for all their work up to date, but there's nothing in there for them to continue. And so I have an allowance in there for them. Craig said, I believe their kind of average billable rate is about $150 an hour. I put, just as a placeholder for discussion with you all, $7,500. You may say you want more than that. You may say you don't want that at all, but that is a placeholder if you want Prime AE to continue to be involved in the process. The other one was a sewer and water line item allowance based on that conversation we just had a minute ago. So the way an allowance would work, if we don't need it, you all get it back. It sits in this other budget. It can't be used by the contractor. It's only there if we actually need that allowance. Otherwise, it would go back to you at the end. Then there's a general conditions line item. It's $6,200. That's our actual project time and exposure from a company perspective. And then I've got a combined line item that I'm splitting with profit for us, but also your owner's rep, the Wheat-Libby Group. I've got a combined total for both of us in there of $10,425, so it's about $5,000 a piece. That actually may end up being a little bit more to the owner's rep side. Jill and I need to talk through that. But that would bring your overall budget for gonna send this PDF to you guys to Brenna when we're done, so she can distribute with you all. But that's, to Micah's point, I think we've cut just about everything we feel like we can cut for a project, of this size. And so really the ball's, at this point, I think, certainly any other questions you have, we wanna answer them and help you, be able to say yes or no. But I think we're to the point where, the ball's gonna be in your court to decide, is this a project the community's able to tackle? Or is this one, that you're not able to do at this point? But, I think we feel pretty good, this is about as sharp as we can make this number.
I got a question there. So on any of these line items, this is your actual cost, and your profits is all in the very first line item as far as your profit and that sort of thing. So all these other line items is just what you believe to be your actual cost, is that right?
I'm not sure I'm tracking, can you ask that slightly differently?
You guys need to make money on this project. Is the money that you're making in the profit that's up on the very first line, the 51,000, or do you have profit built into every line item down through here?
Yeah, that's, Micah can address that. So on the construction costs, those are gonna be where his profit centers are all at, and Micah can address that, how he, can best answer it.
Sure. Yeah, each line item, I broke this down kind of a la carte, so that way we can pick and choose some of this. So that means each line I'm going to have all of my costs with my overhead, plus my profit, plus a small contingency to be able to make sure that we have everything built in there. So what you see is very much what you get. That way, if you take something off, we're still covered. It's been basically itemized as such.
So on the very first item where it says your overhead and profit, that isn't for the whole job, that's just for that one line item.
That's
Because
correct.
you got
Yes, sir.
overhead and profit built into every one of these buckets.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So that's true for Micah's company. Our company, we've got ours broken out explicitly, because as the developer, that's how we show ours, so you know exactly what we're making. Like I said, I'll PDF this document to you. So what questions do you all have, what feedback? I know you don't need to make a decision today, but we're coming up on your time frame for your grant, and so we just want to keep that dialogue open and let you guys decide where this is going to head.
I'd like to see us have a conversation amongst ourselves here a little bit, just to
Yeah.
kind of understand a little bit if we could.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
What I'll do, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just haven't walked over to the building to understand, other than, 2 years ago, to understand the scope of what everything's looking like, and to see that right there, to see if there's opportunities. Cause we only got so much money.
Right.
And we wanna get the job done, we wanna get the job done in a very quality way. We don't wanna cut corners that shouldn't be cut, like don't put the roof on. So, I don't know what all our options are. So just out of curiosity, and again, I don't know who all the players is that's on the meeting here, but when we go down through here, like that floor covering, if we don't like none of your options here, I guess that floor covering could be sourced from another vendor, or is this you guys got control of this entire project? How does that work as we're trying to figure out how we can get within our budget of the quality stuff that we're looking for?
Okay, so we always say you guys are in control of the budget. If you have some different options that you would prefer, we are certainly open to having Micah price those and go that route. He's taken what the engineer and architect put together and taken his best, work at getting it narrowed down. But if you have specific information where you say, I'd be interested in this product, by all means, we will consider that. It's your choice to make in the end. These are your dollars.
Gotcha. All right.
We don't ever want you guys to feel like you don't get to drive the process. It's your decision. We just want to give you the tools to make the best decisions you can.
Okay. Well, I think, if you send that information over, then I'll share that with everybody in that PDF, but then, you know,
Yep.
we'll jump off here and have our conversation and see where we land.
Okay, that sounds great. We appreciate everybody's time, and I'll send it over right now so you can have that conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, guys, we appreciate you.
Hey, John.
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
First question I have basically is, from a historic standpoint, that building was built 1850s, 1860s,
Early 1900.
early 1900s.
1910, 1908 or
Seven, something.
1907, right there.
At that time, it would have had copper guttering, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Copper, I mean, I would have thought this much money we're spending, it would definitely have copper guttering. As soon as I asked about the guttering right off the bat, that's not historic at all. I mean, I just,
Neither them square gutters, downspouts that I was talking about, so I got my building down there, they're a pain, and they don't do a good job.
yeah, I would have thought that this would have been more historical, I guess, is what I was getting to. And
Well, some of the stuff, like they're talking about the red oak trim, which is a great idea, I guess that's what we got over there, I think that's, but then put it on a concrete floor? You know, I don't know.
well, that
Without
was the
some
next
kind of
thing.
finish on the
You
floor.
know, if you do the epoxy, we have our epoxy in our garage, and that